So for those of you who have been paying attention to what is a substantially vital issue right now, and again, we see the breaking down of our systems. And again, Trump is not the reason these systems are breaking down. He's just simply throwing lighter fluid on it, which is what he's done ever since he's obtained power. It has been inevitable for years that we were heading towards a disintegration of our institutions. There are many reasons why we've gotten here. I think one of the most significant in our respective lifetimes was the Supreme Court decision in 2000 regarding the presidential election. Everybody knows that Al Gore won that election, and we got stuck with the worst form of neocon politics ever with George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, among other reasons.
I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, because I don't think you do, but I'm looking at that thing that said that about birthright citizenship rating is a 5-alarm catastrophe. I don't know what news source that is, but that's got to be some lib. That's some lib propaganda if I ever saw it.
So I'll get a different one. If you want a different one,
No, but we can put it up to show a perfect example of lib fear-mongering propaganda.
Okay, well, I think that's fine. And then if you want me to grab a conservative one, I'd be happy to do that.
No, I have the actual decision. I was going to explain it.
Okay,
See, but no, please put up how they're making what they say about this, because I think
the reason. Well, no, the reason why I'm not getting as antsy in the pantsy as everybody else seems to be about this particular decision is because it's still the same. It's still the same modus operandi. The people in the Democratic side of politics are saying it's the end of the world, and people on the Republican side of politics are saying this is wonderful. So,
right. And most of them don't understand it, right? But put this up. Go ahead, put this up. This ridiculousness. So this
is from the Nation, and this is, keep in mind, Elie Mystal is an absolute shill for the Democratic establishment.
This is my point. I didn't know who wrote it, but all I saw was the headline, and I said, that is some lib fear-mongering propaganda. So the headline reads, the Supreme Court's birthright citizenship ruling is a 5-alarm catastrophe. This is wrong on so many levels, okay? First of all, the fact that the subject of this case happens to be about birthright citizenship is not the issue that the Supreme Court actually ruled on. And this is something we've talked about on this channel before. I've brought it up with other cases. When a case goes to the Supreme Court, it is there to have a very specific question of law decided. That's why it's there. They're not redetermining facts. They're not looking at evidence. They're not having witnesses come in and testify. That's not how that works. What they're looking at is something that happened as a question of law, procedure in the lower courts, to look and see if those courts were following their job, if everybody was doing their job, right? Like that's what this is. So they don't just come in and give some opinion. I will refer everyone, Glenn Greenwald today did like a 10-minute segment really explaining this. I thought he did a really good job. And I unfortunately have to give somewhat props to Amy Coney Barrett. You know, I do, because they're not wrong. So this is how this case really breaks down. All right. It doesn't even do that. So guys, our Constitution has a very, very narrow, specific definition of what is a federal court case, right? Like what constitutes something that can be brought in a federal court. It is very specific. And I just don't think people really understand how a lot of this works. So basically, and I only learned this from reading this decision that Amy Coney Barrett wrote. But basically, and I never even knew that this has been happening, but apparently increasingly so. So since about, the mid last century, apparently courts have increasingly been expanding their own power. And I say this because this is something that people have to understand. So if you bring a case into a federal court, right, whatever that case is, right, it could be a civil suit between two people from two different states. It could be between a person suing their state, right? Like there's different reasons to be in a federal court, right? That court can issue decisions and injunctions on the parties of that case. So for example, in this case where Trump, and it happens to be a birthright citizenship case, the district court, the judge is able to issue an injunction protecting those particular people from that case from being deported. That judge at that district level, and I clerked for a district judge in San Antonio, like you are but one bleep, okay? That judge apparently, and I didn't know this was going on across the whole country as often as it has been, but it increased a lot under Joe Biden and even more so under Trump. We've got district judges that are creating injunctions nationwide. And so, in other words, other than just protecting the people that are in front of you, which is basically the definition of your job is the case and controversy brought before you, your injunction applies to everyone in the whole country regarding that executive order. And that's just not how this is supposed to work. That is not proper. I don't even think it's a good idea. And so the thought that, and from what I'm understanding, I have not read the entire opinion. I did read the syllabus or the synopsis, syllabus. And I also have not read Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissent. But they were really taking shots at each other in both the opinion and the dissent. And I got to say, from what I'm reading in the opinion, it appears that in the dissent, she was just sort of making stuff up like what would be good for the country. Well, that's nice. That's nice. But that's not how this works. And this is one of those things. So like, it really pisses me off.
Colin, scroll down a little, please.
This is not true. And by the way, it has been getting excessively problematic for the past 100 years, according to some of these cases that she cited in the opinion. And so, I mean, I don't disagree with this, to be honest with you.
The Supreme Court on Friday handed a significant victory to Donald Trump and future American presidents when curbing lower courts' power to block executive orders. President Trump was beaming as he was totally beaming as the White House briefing room podium called it a big, amazing decision when the administration is very happy about it. He said it was a monumental victory for the Constitution, separation of powers, and the rule of law.
Well, that's true to some extent because, again, federal courts, which is it's Article 3 of our Constitution, it's very specific. Right? Like it says, this is what you're allowed to do. This is the parameters of your job. And so I don't want district judges. Like I can't fathom when I was clerking for my judge to issue an injunction that was nationwide. And that just doesn't even make sense to me. It's definitely an overreach, but the fact that they're framing it both sides, if you will, as if somehow it's a partisan thing is just stupid.
Colin,
it's just not. It's just not. It's called the Constitution thing. And, you know, the birthright citizenship issue is not what they decided. That's the point. It has nothing to do with this case. And they just keep focusing on that wording because it's fear mongering.
The Supreme Court has opened the door for the Trump administration to no longer grant automatic citizenship to everyone born on American soil. Now, with all due respect to people who think that that should be the case, I don't agree with that at all. I do think being an American citizen is a privilege and that we do need to go through the proper channels in order to do that. But that's a whole other story, at least for the moment. Now the White House will have to implement its plan, which will be no easy task. On Friday, the nation's highest court allowed Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship to go into effect in a month's time, while leaving room for lower courts to curb the impact on those who have standing to sue. States traditionally handle processing birthright certificates. I'm sorry?
It just says birth certificates.
Oh, I have birth certificates, and many do not record the citizenship of the parents. Democratic-run state governments will be in no rush to do so, no matter what the Trump administration may desire. And Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who you were mentioning, writing for the majority, left the door open for states to make the case that a more broad block on Trump's birthright citizenship action is necessary. So what this is telling me, and again, kudos to the BBC, because it always takes somebody outside the United States to offer some type of an opinion that is not completely hyper-partisan when it's being written.
Only on domestic things, because on anything international, they're just as far up the wrong asses as they can be. So we're not giving too much credit to the BBC, but
yeah.
Continue.
Well, in this case, that sets up big legal battles to come. As the states see it, their harms, financial injuries, and the administrative burdens flowing from citizen-dependent benefit programs cannot be remedied without a blanket ban on the enforcement of the executive order. The lower courts should determine whether a narrower injunction is appropriate, so we leave it to them to consider these and any related arguments. President Trump described the court's decision on Friday as a giant win. He added that the birthright citizenship hoax has been indirectly hit hard and that the decision would prevent scamming of our immigration process. You know, and forget
it doesn't, though. It doesn't, because it doesn't answer the birthright citizenship question. So that's sort of a side. That's why this is so misleading. To me, you're born here. You're here. You're us.
Yeah.
The idea of what they're doing, it's just bigotry and hateful. That's it. That's the point.
Isn't
and it's
that
to rile up people. It's to convince people to kick down instead of punch up. It is to keep people distracted with non-existent problems when there are real problems. And it is blaming people that have less institutional power than you for your problems. Never will solve the problem. Never going to happen. So I am opposed to anything having to do with that's mean and vicious and bigoted. So if that's the nature of it, I'm just not going to be with it. So also, to me, I don't care who's born where. If you're here, you get rights.